Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and even and that's not to say that there are. I'm sure there are out there in the world probably psychologically and physically unhealthy sexual practices, but masturbation's not one of them.
Right. Right.
You know, and just not being married when you have sex with another consenting adult certainly isn't one of them.
Right.
And yet all of these things religion wants to tie guilt to.
Right.
You know, and that's funny. So I think it's maybe because religion wants to be the source of happiness in your life, it has to immediately declare all other sources of happiness in your life competition and perhaps...
Well, as I just really described in great detail in the book, always look at the virus as trying to perpetuate itself. The God virus wants to perpetuate, just like the cold virus wants to perpetuate itself, or the HIV virus, or the gonorrhea bacillus wants to perpetuate itself. It doesn't care about you. It cares about perpetuating itself. The most efficient way to perpetuate is the one it's going to choose if it possibly can. And God viruses are constantly mutating, constantly trying to change to perpetuate within whatever culture they're in, just like the swine flu is constantly mutating, or just like the HIV is constantly mutating. So once you understand that God viruses want to just go from one host to the next, what's the most efficient way? Make you feel guilty about something you're going to do anyway. So use that God virus to assuage the guilt. Now what you're going to go out and do is that same behavior. But then you're going to teach your children, sex before marriage is wrong, don't do it, and feel guilty as hell about it if you do it, and come back to this church to get your guilt assuaged. It's a beautifully efficient system. And it works so many ways for all religions, whether it's Islam or Hinduism or even Buddhism. There's a lot of sexual guilt around Buddhism. Christianity, obviously. Catholicism, you name it, they've discovered at some point that this is a great way to infect, just like sexually transmitted diseases like gonorrhea, or any venereal diseases, has discovered that sexual contact is a great way to infect.
Right. It's the neat trick that they discovered.
Yeah. Right.
Just to let people know, for those people wondering why we're having these crazy background issues and stuff, the computer that takes care of our internet stream is having difficulties. So if you're watching the stream, that's why it's not doesn't look particularly good for you. And they're working on it, and we'll take care of it, and we'll get to calls shortly. One of the things about religion as a virus and the neat tricks that we were talking about is that there's also limits. And for a religion that attempts to be too good, and for example, you might have the particular Puritan religions that are so imposing about sex that they kill off all of their, there's nobody left to pass on along the religion.
Or like the Shakers, who would prohibit sex.
Yes. And so when you're talking about these, I guess what we're looking at now in the modern religions is in much the same way when we look at the animal kingdom. These are the survivors. These are the ones that have come through, that have managed to learn the neat tricks that allow them to propagate. And the difference here, of course, is that these aren't entities. They're concepts and ideas, and we can identify what's wrong with them. I mean, you've done it with the God virus. We've done it here with regard to the classical arguments for the existence of God, or somebody may call in to explain things. What is it about the virus that makes it so pernicious in protecting itself from criticism, which other people would think is obvious, absurdly obvious?
You could ask the same question about HIV. What makes HIV so pernicious and capable of mutating and propagating itself in the biological world? The same principles are happening. It creates a method to protect itself and inject itself into the next person. We can take this metaphor to extremes sometimes, and it works. I was shocked as I was writing the book how well it works. A virus like HIV has to have a key in order to unlock your cells and go into it, to inject its own DNA and propagate itself using the mechanisms of reproduction inside of the cell. If you've got antibodies floating around inside of you that know that HIV is bad, or whatever rhinovirus or whatever virus is, what it will do is it will take that antibody, will glom on to the key, if you will, to prevent it from being able to inject itself into the cell. Religions do the same thing. religion has to have a key in order to get into you. And so you will be given the virus when you're very young, because that's when you're most susceptible. You're most susceptible to religious viruses when you're young, or rhinoviruses when you're young, or that's what, or any other kind of virus. We get viruses
when you're
a lot.
old.
Or
When your immune system is starting to fail.
Right.
And we see that with religion too.
Yes. And I call it the rational immune system versus the biological immune system. They're both working. And you and I as adults, we have a rational immune system against all sorts of crazy ideas out there. I mean, I'm not running out grabbing the Scientology books and giving money to Scientology, because I got the immunities to that. Mormons can't. I'm immune to the Mormons. But I was raised a fundamentalist Christian. That's the one group that can get to me. They know the keys. And I was raised with a keyhole, so to speak, in myself, where they can inject their DNA constantly. So it's really difficult when a person's been raised in something, because the virus has just made a path into your brain to keep you from leaving that, and it's programmed you. And we can almost look on in some of the research and see that people do really, their brains, their whole way of structuring their world is changed based on which God virus they were taught early on. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to change that later. And once it's like a lot of ideas. You can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of idea.
Right.
Once you get that set in your brain, it's hard to extract it. And you are programmed to propagate, to go out and find new people to infect that. And the first person you're going to infect is your children. And the rest are going to be your family. You build a whole social structure around it.
As a reminder to everybody, we're here with Dr. Darrell Ray, author of the book, The God Virus, How Religion Infects Our Lives and Culture. We're going to start taking calls now because we've already got callers on the line who had questions for Dr. Ray. And we'll just go ahead and get started and see how it goes. We've got Leo in Wales.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks very much for the show, because it's quite inspiring in many ways.
Thanks very much for calling in at the late time, or early for you.
Yeah, late for us, but it's worth it, I think. Yeah, for Dr. Darrell, you're talking about this metaphor of religion or God being a virus. In your research or your book, have you come up with anything to suggest what the metaphoric antidote is, or how we should deal with this kind of virus?
Well, I've got several things I talk about in the book, but first of all, good to hear from Wales. It's one of my favorite places on earth, is North Wales around Ruthin. Are you familiar or close to there?
No, Cardiff. So.
Oh, Cardiff. I've been to Cardiff. Yeah. Yes, beautiful, beautiful area. Well, I get this question almost every time I speak about the God virus, is how do you treat it? Well, first of all, you don't treat it by telling people they're stupid for believing in whatever God virus they have. And that's one of my pet peeves, that we as non-theists, I'm assuming you're a non-theist. If you're not, I'm sorry.
If I were to define myself, I've seen Matt define themselves as well a few times. There's atheists, and I think I would put myself under the anti-theist category.
Okay.
Because I would also perceive there to be some harm in religion itself, in the various claim of a God and not dealing with reality, and the consequences of, say, allowing certain authorities to propagate the idea that it's okay to not use condoms in sub-Saharan Africa. I
well
think
said, yeah.
The physical harm for us.
Yeah. Well, answer to your question, though, how do you treat it? First of all, I don't think it's my duty on the face of this earth to treat other people for their God virus. And if I take it upon myself to try and convert everybody, I'm really not behaving any different than the religionists are behaving. They try to convert me to their particular religion. I'm not trying to convert them to atheism. I'm trying to keep them out of my life and out of my politics. That I try to do. I try to raise my kids or whatever people I'm involved with to let them know where I stand, but it's not my job to convert the rest of the world. And I think when we get on our kick about we're here to convert you to think like we think, we're really not doing much different than the religionists are doing to us.